It's easy to see why our guest speaker, Yakov Horowitz, and the Rays are close friends, because they're cut from the same cloth. The term Chacham Roas and Noah can be applied to Rabbi Yakov Horowitz in spades. Rabbi Horowitz is an educator par excellence. He's an author, he's a speaker, and he is an activist. I think in my years of promoting speakers, I don't think I've ever used that term activist, because it raises images of like someone chaining themselves to a fence. But I mean it in the highest way possible, in the highest sense of the word. He will do anything and he will go anywhere to protect, to teach, to inspire, and to advance the welfare of children. And it's our pleasure and honor to hear from Yakov Horowitz.
Good afternoon, everyone. David, thank you for the beautiful introduction. Shul and Devara, thank you for sponsoring. It's an honor to be here. When I started making Bar Mitzvah talks, when the first Talmidim in our yeshiva became Bar Mitzvah about 15 years ago, I capped my speeches at 7 minutes. And I informed the parents of the school. Everybody knew when I got up at a Bar Mitzvah, 7 minutes, up and down. And as smartphones got smarter, I realized very quickly that I don't have 7 minutes anymore. So now I'm at about 3.5. Now, that's not the case here. He asked me to speak longer than that. But what I try to do during that time, I'm thinking really be more than that. A short thought, look the kid in the eye and say something unique about them that makes them nod their head and feel that Rebbe gets me. And I was watching Barry when David said, Reyes and Nyla, and you nodded your head. And it was beautiful to capture Barry and Harriet, the way they live their lives, the way they think, the way they're bold enough to do things that other people aren't doing, and to take causes that aren't glamorous. Prevention is never glamorous. No one honors you at a dinner for reading a kid a bedtime story. That's prevention. It's building a relationship. And it's so important. And when David called me, he said, okay, we're doing this event. I literally, this was the conversation. Okay, we're doing a Madraigos thing, and we're honoring Barry and Harriet, and it's a beautiful preventative program that we're developing in the school. I said, check, 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 I'm in. So I'm here. And I'd like to challenge you, and I'd like to really get you to think about parenting and dealing with today's children and having the courage to be inspired to be able to raise them effectively. I'm an optimistic person by nature, even though I deal with a lot of stuff. And I really believe that looking at a generation's challenges and saying, oh, this is a magefa, this is this, I think it's a lack of faith. We have to believe that our Torah gave us the tools to raise erlich, religious, inspired, well-adjusted kids. This is about giving them the tools to do it. So I'm going to talk to you about Rabbi Shrage Faivel Mendlowitz, Rabbi Mendlowitz, the visionary leader of Torah Vodaas. He was my second-hand Rebbe because he passed away in 1948. I'm not that old. But everyone is virtually, I went to Torah Vodaas, so virtually every single one of my Rebbeim was a Talmud of his. I got to know him through a dozen people. His yahrzeit is today. I want to talk to you about him. I want you to think about emulating him. And I think that we as a group would do very well to learn from his vision and his courage and his leadership. I'm going to start with a story. In 1981, I took a job at a bungalow. That was my first job. I just got married and I wanted to get out of the city, so I took a job in a bungalow colony. And down the road there was a Hasidic kollel, and they had a minyan every day, which our bungalow colony didn't because most of the guys were in the city. So this was a very Hasidic group of fellows. They were great young guys. I had a delightful time with them. And one day a guy walks into shul, and all right, I'm dating it again. Remember, it was the beginning of the 80s, with a powder blue jumpsuit, like a powder blue sweat outfit, whatever. And he just got there, he didn't exactly, like Sesame Street, what are these two are not like the others? He wasn't like the others, okay? Anyway, this fellow opens up his house in Tfilin, and he pulls out a thick gartel that a Rebbe would be jealous of. And he starts putting on a gartel. A gartel is a Hasidic, like a sort of belt that Hasidim put on as in preparation to davening. So one of the adorable Kol guys comes over to me and he says in Yiddish, Rabbi Yankel, can you make sense of this for me? So he says, Dusse b'chizein. He points to his suit. He says, Dusse b'chizein. I saw this. Dusse b'chizein. The gartel. Die zwei zusammen habe ich keinmal nicht gesehen. Those two together I never saw. And he has to politely, it was not derogatory at all. He just wanted to understand it. Like, that doesn't go with this. And I told him, I don't know who he is. I never met the guy. But he's one of Shrage Faivel Mendlowitz's Talmidim. This guy was about 60 years old. And sure enough, I said, go over to him, ask him where he went to yeshiva. Just say hello. And he'll tell you, oh, sure, I went to Tarvadas. Who was your Rebbe? Who inspired you in yeshiva? That just captured him. His ability to not put people in boxes. His famous quote was, I might get not all the details correct, he said that the best yeshiva possible should have, a Hungarian cook and a Litvisher Rosh Yeshiva and a Yeki running the books, and he had a whole list of things and that's what he did really. That's really what he did in Tarvadas. And that's why we learn from our Rabbeim tolerance and acceptance and the ability to be inspired. When David called me yesterday and said, listen, Yaki, I don't know exactly what you're going to speak about, but somebody came over to me and said, Horowitz, I was speaking, I was really good, all this talk about abuse really bugs me out. So we're not talking about that stuff. We're not talking about it. This is about prevention. I don't think frightening ever works. We published a child safety book that the Chasdei Hashem sold over 50,000 copies in 3 languages. And one of the things they teach you is that when you try to educate children or adults, when you frighten them, the fear takes over and they don't remember a word you said. They'll be frightened, but they won't remember what you said, which is why I do these talks in a very casual way. And our book was presented this way. It doesn't help. Education works. Speaking to children and saying, the internet is terrible, it's this, that, doesn't help them do anything. You need to educate them. You need to give them the tools. Why do we assume that children have tools when we tell them to do things? Will you please clean up your desk? Who said that the kid knows how to clean up the desk? I'm 57 years old, and I find organizational skills very painful. Thank God I married. Yes, my shoes match, because my wife, Baruch Hashem, takes care of stuff like that. But I need to be taught. It's not enough to tell me, clean up your desk. You gotta help me. Why don't you get along with each other? Why don't you be responsible on the internet? What do these things mean? And that's what the beauty of these. I read the literature on the program, and I really look forward to learning more about it. And you have an open offer. If I could ever be of help to the program, or you need someone to speak for it, I would be delighted to. I love the idea. I love what it will accomplish. I'm going to talk to you about today's kids, today's parents, and today's grandparents. How are they different than 30 years ago when we were raising our kids? And most of us, we have kind of our 4 married kids, and our youngest is a young adult. She's just turning 21. And my wife and I say all the time what we hear people in my generation saying, and we say, oh, thank God our kids are out of the house already or grown, because it's much, much more challenging today. But I think rather than just get nervous and get frightened, think about it. What's different about them? Well, I identified a few things that I hope you will find thought-provoking. First of all, they know so much. They have so much information at such a young age. It doesn't mean they know enough about it, and it doesn't mean that they know the right information. I pinched a nerve in my neck a few days ago, and I went online to find out what foods I should be eating, I went to the doctor, but I just wanted to read up stuff. It's so confusing because I don't know what to believe there. Some people, were telling me to take off your shoes and socks and walk barefoot. No, I'm just talking, but it was such different ideas. How do I know what's good and what's not? Today's kids, they need to learn how to process, not to memorize. Google memorizes for them. And I don't think it's a yeshiva thing. I think the general school system, with great respect, I don't think they get this. I think that children need to learn how to process, I shouldn't say don't get it. Many don't get it, and I think many are adjusting because we're not in that generation. The people who are making the decisions are 2 generations away from it. They need to learn how to interpret, not to repeat. We need to inspire them, not instruct them. Today's kids are much, much more tolerant. It's a fascinating, fascinating thing to observe. The way today's kids are, I believe, so much more tolerant than my generation, or even the generation of my children. And it has ramifications in many ways. Tolerance is the new religion. And it's beautiful because you can live your life any way you want. No one cares what your first name sounds like anymore. Right? When I was a kid, it wasn't Yakov, it was Jacob. Nobody cares. The only problem is that if you're intolerant, you're not Bikoros. Okay? If the religion is tolerance and everybody is taught to accept everybody else, when children hear things that are intolerant to them, and many of the things are our belief system have to be positioned very carefully so that they're presented in a way. They just shut down when they hear things like that. One final thing. They're questioning. I told this to my Rebbeim 15 years ago already at staff meetings. And I would say that every single Rashi that you're teaching your children is subject to what we call in sports a coach's challenge. And a coach's challenge is if a football coach doesn't like the call on the field, they throw out a flag and they redo it again. No, I'm supposed to say that to you. No, I was once in the airport. I saw it. I thought it was an air conditioner. Actually, I was on JetBlue. The guy next to me, I was doing the dive. The guy next to me said, I don't want to look, but I did. Okay? That means that at some point in time, it could be when they're 6, could be when they're 10, could be when they're 30. They're going to get an email from someone that has a link to some place that said that the Mabul never happened. So I told them, everything, teach carefully. Only say things that are really sourced. Think in your mind, do you really need to say every medrash that's going to be a challenge for people to believe years later? Do you need to explain that the medrashim are allegorical, possibly, and many have interpretations this way? It's such a different world, and I think the more you understand it, the better parents you could be, better educators you could be, and the more you'll appreciate the great work that the Rays are dedicating and that Madraigos and their staff are doing. Today's parents are more involved, much more involved. They're better educated, generally speaking, and they're much busier. I picked those 3. I'll tell you a little story. I was always, anybody know my younger brother, Rabbi Yehuda? He's a mashgiach in South Shore, in the 5 towns. Anybody? I have a brother who's a malach. He's a really an angel. Really, didn't say a word of Lashon Hara since he was born. He's a real tzaddik. You need a bracha from someone, I'm telling you, he's the guy to go to. Not that he'll ever take it, but he's really a tzaddik. I was 2 years, I'm 2 years older than he is. No one ever confused the 2 of us. So I decided, and by the way, same parents, same life, same situation. Your kids are not the same. I think a sign of a healthy school is when kids think differently. I think a sign of a healthy home is when kids aren't all the same. So I decided Don't ask me why. We grew up in Bell Harbor, so there were 4 children, 2 families that sent kids into Flatbush to Yeshiva Harriet. So I decided one day that Erev Shavuos is not a good day for Yeshiva. I'm learning all night. Why should I have to learn in the morning too? Makes no sense. So that's the way my head works. So I was the oldest, and I told the other kids, they say that there was some threats there. I don't remember that, but whatever it was, I told the kids that were telling our parents that there's no yeshiva tomorrow. And we pulled it off for 5 years. We just didn't show up, and we said there's no school. Could you imagine doing this today? So you're more involved, and it's great if you're involved good and effectively and supporting. You're better educated, but you're busier. And it's so important. I beg you, make the time to listen, to spend time with your children if you have young kids at home. It's so important. That's ultimate prevention. And like I said before, no one's going to honor you at a dinner for that. But it's one of the most important things you can do. Today's grandparents are younger, generally speaking. They have more free time on their hands, generally speaking. And I think they're more important than ever. First of all, my generation grew up without grandparents. And we didn't need Bobby, second name, Bobby Chicago or Bobby Grossman. If anyone had a grandmother, that was a lot. Okay, so our generation grew up primarily without grandparents, or very few of them. But those who are grandparents, I just wanted to leave you with a thought. We have a balance of rachamim and din. Every person in our lives, we have rachamim is mercy, and din is my way. Here's what the rules are. Parents do both. Grandparents don't. You want to sum it up? That's the great part of having grandchildren. You know, say grandchildren are God's reward for not strangling your teenagers. Okay? So if you get there, Baruch Hashem, you should all get there if you're not there yet, is to spoil the children, because it is so important for them, I think especially now, because of the way technology works, especially as they hit adolescence, it's so much easier to get hurt online than it was before. Think about the number of people who could have offended you. In my day, it was 20. And the people who would know that you were offended was the same 20. Now it's thousands. And it goes out to thousands. And it's very confusing. And even if it doesn't happen to them, it happens to other people, which is another tool that the children need to learn about being responsible digital citizens. But to have someone who's always there, I cannot tell you what that means. I just encourage you as grandparents to think about it. My last message is what I said at the beginning about faith, about trust, about optimism, about taking a page from Rabbi Shrage Faivel Mendlowitz's life and his worldview on things. I believe that if he were alive today, if Rabbi Mendlowitz were alive today, he would have been all over this technology thing before Al Gore invented it even. I think he would have been raising money, developing digital tools so that children should learn. There's no doubt in my mind that was the case. I had to check. I checked with Jonas and Rosenblum. I want to quote something because I'm not 100%. I was waiting for Jonathan to give me an okay that it was true. But I heard stories from his Talmidim about how interested he was in doing new things and harnessing everything for learning. He wasn't afraid to send his kids out. The Orthodox movement was tiny at the time. And he was optimistic. He was building and growing and thinking about what needed to be done. My motto for the internet is postpone, protect, prepare. Postpone as long as you can. Protect, filters, watch, see what's going on. Both of these, I do a workshop for an hour and a half on that. Not right now. Invite me back, maybe. If you're on a Harriet and Harriet. So I think you postpone as long as you can, you protect, but ultimately if you don't prepare them to make good choices, what have you really accomplished? It's a holding action. It's fascinating that the Torah, when the Meraglim and the spies came to Eretz Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu asked them, see if they're strong or not, they said the people who live out in the open fields are strong, because they don't need walls to protect them. That we need to raise strong kids. We need to raise strong, emotionally adjusted, healthy, happy kids. And part of it is really, I hate to say it this way, it's walking them through their mistakes. My last thought for the day. Your job as parents, your job as educators, and this program is really designed to help children as they make mistakes. You ever notice that we have free choice, right? We're just starting with Elul now. So part of the whole system of Schar v'Honish, or reward of punishment, is predicated on the notion that we have free choice. Excuse me. Whose idea was that? If you were or you were a board member and you were running the world, would you say, all right, do whatever they want? It's fascinating. We don't run summer camps like that. We don't run this shul. Doesn't run on free choice. Hashem gives us complete free choice. We get punished later, but we don't get zapped. Think about it. You don't go to jail if you're nasty to someone or you violate mitzvahs in the Torah. It's fascinating. Why is this the case? I'll ask you another question. Why are 13-year-olds from 13 to 20 we're chayiv b'dinei adam and patah b'dinei shamayim? That means we're obligated if we damage someone, but if we sin to God, Hashem gives us a waiver until we're 20. What's that all about? So in real world, if a kid keys the car, if the kid takes a key and scratches off the paint, the kid's got to pay for it. If he doesn't have enough money, he has to work for it and pay it off. But if he doesn't keep Shabbos, Hashem says, I get it. It's okay. Till you're 20. Well, what's that all about? I'll tell you what I think. I think that Hashem gave us adolescence as a time to grow. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, this is the way Hashem created us. We learn far more from our mistakes than anything else. You put on a coat, not because your mother told you to, because you got sick once. And you take an umbrella because you got soaked. And you don't throw a lot of money into risky investment because you lost money with that once. That's the way we learn. Hashem gave us adolescence so that we can stop making our mistakes when our parents are there. And I think that when we cocoon, as to quote my dear Chaver Rabbi, if all we're doing is cocooning, if all we're doing is postponing and protecting, think about it. We're not letting them be adolescents. So they become adolescents at 23, when the toys are different and the challenges and the stakes are much higher. Our job is to give our children real guidance. You can't get guidance, that's the second workshop. The way you do it is to build a real relationship. Nobody's going to tell you something, they're doing something wrong, unless you have it. This is what you need to learn as parents. I encourage you to learn. Study it, read about it. There's a great book called The Shallows by Nicholas Carr about the internet. There's I can give you great referrals to good books. There's great stuff out there to study parenting. But this program, if you listen, what was the young lady who spoke about the girl who called for dating tips? Where is she? Shira. I thought that was remarkable. That meant that you stored something in her brain, and when she needed it, she drew back to this. That's what this is all about. It's about giving them the tools, about helping them through the mistakes, and about having the self-confidence to believe that we can raise great kids. We have my wife and I, discuss with Hashem, we have 4 married children. In the aggregate, they have hundreds and hundreds of friends. They're great kids. They're also making mistakes. They're great kids. I'm optimistic. I think people who say, the internet, it's all over, I tell them, you don't have faith. We have to be optimistic. We better learn. And we better give kids protection and programs and continue this type of work so that each and every child could be matzliach and really actualize and become everything they can. Thank you very, very much. And